Hi, this is Josh Kulp. We're learning Daf Shevui. We are on Masechet Kiddushin Daf Vav, page 6. And I want to give a little preview of what we're going to learn this week because there's a lot of interesting stuff. I think it's a really interesting page. We're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the laws and the practices of Kiddushin. The first thing to note is the beginning sugya is really about language, right? The particular language, the words that somebody uses when he is betrothing somebody. Sorry, an ambulance just went by if you heard that. So I want to first of all, note that the word Kiddushin, mekadesh, Aisha mitkadeshet, those languages is a rabbinic word for betrothal. In the Bible, they use the word erusin or arusa. And rabbis continue to use that word, but Kiddushin itself, the Hebrew word for betrothal, is an invention. We don't know if it's of the rabbis, but it's not found in any other literature that I know of. So it's some kind of like probably post Second Temple, or at least post First Temple use of Hebrew. So along with that, rabbis are willing to look for all sorts of other words that can be used, either biblical or non-biblical, in the act of Kiddushin, in the act of betrothal. The word kinyan we've seen in the beginning of the Masechet, to acquire. That's also largely a word used by the rabbis and not so much used in the Bible, although I do believe it appears occasionally in wisdom literature. So some of the words, you're going to look through the sugya, you're going to see some of the types of words they use. A lot of them are taken from allusions from the stories of Adam and Eve, which is the primal marriage story in Jewish literature and in rabbinic mind. A lot of the Sheva brachot are allusions to Gan Eden. And even if the laws of marriage, according to the rabbis, are not patterned after the relationship between Adam and Eve. After all, Adam and Eve were monogamous, and rabbinic law and the Torah's laws are not. They are polygynous, multiple wives per one man. Still, there's something idealized about the story of Adam and Eve in rabbinic literature, and so some of the languages, words for Kiddushin or for betrothal that we see in this daf are taken from those stories. This sort of segues into a question that comes up, whether or not he actually has to use a betrothal formula at all. If it is clear that he is giving her something as an act of betrothal, then maybe he does not have to say anything. After all, the main aspect, we saw this from the Mishnah, the main thing that betroths the woman to the man is the giving of something of value. If the Kiddushin is done with kesef, it's an action. It's not words. And saying hareat mekudeshet li or any formula like that without giving, no one doubts that that's not valuable. That's not valid. So the question is, can you do an act of Kiddushin without saying anything at all? And many rabbis that we'll see in the sugya say yes. The one thing that we must ascertain, according to all opinions, is that the woman is consenting. He can't just sort of like walk up to a woman in the shuk, give her a ring or some other thing of value, and thereby, voila, she's betrothed to him. We have to make sure that she knows that he thinks that he's betrothing her, and she has to acquiesce. She has to agree to it. So that's largely what that piece of the sugya is about how to make sure that she knows what's going on if he doesn't say anything. The third part gets into some differences between slave manumission, freeing a slave, and divorce. Now, some of you, we had a discussion about this on Facebook, some of you may be tempted to say, oh, look, here's another case where wives are essentially property of their husbands. But I think when you look more closely at the sugya, you'll see that that's exactly the crux of the sugya. Wives are not the property of their husbands. They're not the slaves of their husbands. And therefore, the formulas for freeing a slave and for divorcing a woman should be clear that they're specific to those different situations, even though there may be people who are tempted to say that they're somewhat similar, because in both cases a male is sending somebody away from their household. He's sending a slave away, or he's sending his wife away. But I don't think that this means that essentially the role of a woman is that of a slave or is that of someone acquired belonging in the sense of a slave belonging to her husband. And the final part of the sugya is about marriage with a loan. And this is exploring, if you will, the act of what does it mean to give something to somebody. Clearly, if I take something now that belongs to me and I hand it over to them, that's giving. But what if I forgive them from paying back something that they already owe me? On the one hand, there's no immediate act of transfer. I'm not currently giving something to somebody. On the other hand, there's something valuable in that. Forgiving a loan, I mean, who wouldn't want the bank to forgive them their mortgage? Being forgiven a loan can be of great value. So that's what the Mishnah is exploring. Does betrothal have to be done by currently giving something over, or can it be done by some other act that confers value by the man onto the woman, or gives her something of value? And we're going to continue exploring that on the next daf. I hope you're enjoying learning Daf Shevui. I would encourage you to participate on the Daf Shevui Facebook page. I try to participate as much as possible. I think that one of the goals is to sort of recreate some of the dialogue that would go on in a Beit Midrash. It's hard when we're all learning virtually in different places, but it would be nice for people to try and engage in more conversation. So I hope to hear from you all, and have a great week learning.